Where does the name The Expressionist come from?
It's like my names. People call me Anthony, Anton, Tony. What is identity, you know? I make photographs. People say I am a photographer. I like to think of myself as someone who makes photographs. None of these things are really tied to me, because the parts of me that I try to cultivate are the parts nothing and no one can ever take away. So I lose my eyes, photography becomes slightly difficult. Whatever those things are, they're external and they're great and they are a part of me, but they are not me. Everything is a way and a form of expression, and even more interesting than that is that it's a political statement that you can make through what you wear and how you wear and what you don't wear, you know? At the heart of what I do is that it's an excuse for me to connect with people because, you know, I'm strange and I'm odd. But when there's a camera, it's take me a picture, we chat, we make a connection, and I become like a wandering nomad of human interaction.
Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Baffoe. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics, including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more. So sometimes even just the words, the words that we use.
No, you have to. You have to, because, you know, people joke about it, but words really are spells.
No, absolutely.
And spells in the sense, if you're agnostic or atheist, spells in the sense that they're formulas, in that they are determinative of reality, or in the kind of more spiritual sense, you know? And I think, which is ironic for me, is that both are true, because they are just lenses that people understand the world through, whether astrology, ancestral worship, Christianity. I think what's more important is that you just interrogate that belief system in that it's not harmful or harming you or others. Yeah. And that's the threshold. Beyond that, beyond a certain threshold, what can any of us prove and disprove?
Yeah, so anything, exactly.
You know?
And that's been my personal approach to. So because I didn't grow up in religion, I'm not even atheist, because for me, atheist feels like a commitment. Yeah. Like I'm being definitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, the closest word I could use is agnostic. But in the same time, I talk to my ancestors, and I've been using the same tarot card reader for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, and I burn in pepo.
Yeah.
So
that's as African as it gets.
Yeah,
you know?
But I've created my own.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't rooted. I didn't have to discard something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, you did. You know, you in and of itself, there was a discarding of because I think for me, overall, there's belief and the absence of belief, because even atheism to me is a belief, you know. Like who doesn't believe in anything it's the what do they call it, the nihilists. Those are the only group that we kind of have to, you know, keep an eye on. Everyone else because they kind of determined for themselves in ideology and a way of being. Again, it's how do you frame it, how does it interact with the world, are you forcing it on people, is it harmful? If you can get past that, you know, belief is a discovery, which is where, ironically, out of African parents, they cannot. You know what it's like? My dad used to work for a company for 50 years, got the gold watch, and that boomer mentality is to commit to a belief, to a company, to an ideology, and you're stoic about it. You do not budge. It does not move. And if you do, you're kind of cast aside, or you're cast out of that system. And we come from a system of adaptation and adoption of things and ideas. You know, there was a phase where I had my nails painted black and I was listening to rock, and then I was a Rasta, but, you know, beliefs were malleable, I guess. And I guess that's where we existing, which is why I think we're an interesting group of parents, or millennial parents, because of the freedoms that most of us just didn't have because you went to a Catholic school, or you were this, or a man does that, or you were determined beforehand, and we were fighting against that. And I think for us it's a bit looser, but anyway, I digress.
Whereas I'm Gen X.
Yeah.
So
you're
I'm
my
Gen
brother's
X.
generation.
So even when you talk about like millennial parents, and we'll jump into all of this stuff, but when you talk about, I suspect we've started already, but when you talk about like millennial parents, for me, navigating and trying to understand that my children's parents are of a different generation from me, and therefore how I view certain things, or what I feel, the way I feel certain things should be. I always have to remind myself that I'm dealing with parents who come from a different generation, and therefore they're not always going to see it my way. But I'm going to do a quick intro.
Sure.
Because like I said, I think we've started already.
Sure.
So my guest today is it Rhulani?
Yeah, Rhulani.
Rhulani Anthony Bila, a photographer, filmmaker, and creative entrepreneur who works as a commercial, fashion, and documentary photographer, primarily through his creative consulting agency, Studio Bila. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice intro. Sheesh. I've never heard it back.
But you wrote it on your website. Like I just pulled from there.
10 years ago, before ChatGPT, mind you. Those are original thoughts.
But I mean, we're talking about, and like I said, I think we've really just started already. I mean, and something you mentioned was, your father working for kind of one company and getting the gold watch, and coming from that particular generation where that's an accomplishment, like that's an achievement, particularly with this country's history.
Yeah.
That's an achievement to kind of be able to have that consistency. What was home like growing up for you?
Oh man, home was, it was an adventure. It was discovery, particularly because I have very curious parents. For better or worse, their curiosities were infectious, and it was that kind of household. So questioning, reading, and again, this was great for them in the beginning because it was like, oh, our son is going to read, the Bible, and that's where it's going to begin and end. But you're going to ask questions, and those questions are going to lead you down rabbit holes, all the readings that you find in these particular worlds and instances just become ways of traveling. And because I grew up in Tembisa, we didn't go on family holidays. I didn't grow up particularly wealthy. So it meant that a lot of the opportunities that I had were through education. So I'd get a bursary to go to a Model C school and now access these kids from middle class and upper middle class backgrounds who were like, yeah, we went to Paris and we were skiing on the slopes of whatever. And it, as a kid, you feel excluded, you feel othered, because already I'm probably one of 3 black kids in the class. But what books and what my parents taught me was that, the theater of the mind is that, if we buy you a book about Paris, you can't go to Paris, but you can at least experience the taste and the sounds through your mind's eye.
Yeah.
So that became the curiosity is consuming, is reading and consuming in all kinds of ways. So it was that kind of household of, there's not a lot of things that we can get you, but books and smaller things and those kinds of things that aren't limited, they don't limit you, that expand you. My parents were always more than eager for those. So yeah, it was a house of curiosities, if I can put it that way. And also contrast, my dad swinging a pendulum from being like very religious and very Christian to being very political and being part of the ANC back then, and working his way up quite pronouncedly in those political organizations before he went like fully corporate because he had a family and he wanted to focus on that in the 90s. So yeah, it was a house where anything was possible, and my parents were very non-deterministic. So Just to give you a snapshot, I have an older brother who's like an entrepreneur, an older sister who works in accounting. I work in the creative space, a younger brother who works in the finance space, and a younger sister who's an industrial psychologist. There's no real rhyme or reason other than pursuing, passions and a way of thinking or ways of approaching systems and trying to solve problems that appeal to you. And there's many ways to skin that. Although I think what I do is an overarching veil of what you need for anything, because creativity is a way of thinking rather than what you do. So there's graphic designers who are not creative. They apply a system of thinking and that's all it is. That's not creativity to me. There's a plumber who is going, hey, if we rethink the system and how we work this irrigation, he's probably made that water system 40% more efficient. That's creativity to me, is solving problems. And anyway, I could go on about that, but so that's the kind of household that I had.
I've had multiple conversations about this, and this idea that I think what my last guest actually were talking about, this idea of creative as a noun. And there's a guy I follow and I read his stuff called Austin Kleon, an American guy, and he talks about creative as a verb, like creative as doing. And it's like, as we evolve to this point where creative is a noun, that only applies to people within particular industries, we lose sight of the fact that creativity can be expressed in any environment. And I mean, something that you said, which is interesting to me, because I've never thought about it from that perspective, is that you can get a graphic designer who's not really creative.
Yeah.
Because it's just applying, like you're saying, system. It's a process.
Yeah.
This is what I want to achieve. So these are the steps I'm going to take.
Human AI.
Yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah.
And it exists everywhere. And this is kind of the new territory for me, particularly, because a lot of what I do has been through discovery and books and being self-taught and the advent of the internet. But I'm more fascinated in applied thinking, and as a creative person, understanding that, applying my mind to making a TV ad is good and well and great. But when you start to read up and understand systems thinkings and how the geopolitical and socioeconomic systems operate, you start to want to solve problems, and societal problems become, there's an agency, a friend of mine who's a executive creative director at one of the big agencies sent me this, I think it was Ogilvy, somewhere overseas, but they did this campaign where they worked with creatives as creative and business partners on an idea that wasn't just selling a product. It wasn't just brand awareness. It wasn't just creativity for creativity's sake, like advertising can be and marketing can be, but they solved a real world problem that solved issues for a community that was sustainable, that they could sustain well past that campaign. And I think that's kind of where brands and creativity, and even just what we are doing and what the point of any of this is. You spoke about that awareness, and more in just general conversations. I feel antsy about it. Is that like we need to galvanize? We all need to wake up and kind of say, no one is going to come save us. We can't look to figureheads anymore. We all have to be the hero that we want to see. And it begins in your own community, getting to know your neighbor. Oh, you have 8 onions. I have 4 tomatoes. Give me 4 of your... Now we're kind of working in a system that's to the benefit of society through collaboration, not hyper-individualism. We all don't need a car. We all don't need washing machines, I promise you. If there's one on my floor that we can share, I think the world is going to be a better place for those advents. But again, this is the kind of creativity now that I'm more concerned with than how can I execute a cool idea to sell X. I love it, and I think it's a luxury that we're afforded. But yeah, more and more it feels like there are bigger fish to fry that are beyond any of us, in particular as individuals. We need to put our minds together, essentially.
So what my hope was during and after the pandemic was that people would recognize what's more important and be able to carry that beyond that. And I think a lot of people have. And I say that because I started my journey before COVID, which was, okay, do I need to work 18-hour days to make lots of money and say I'm working for my family but not be available to my family? And so before, a couple of years before the pandemic happened, I started making that shift and tweaking my life accordingly. And during lockdown, I saw a lot of people, particularly with social media, because we were all now online. Yeah. People kind of going, ooh, wait, like this is the most time I've spent with my family. This is the most time I've spent with, or I've thought about X, Y, Z. And I can survive with this. Therefore, how important is, the rat race, the trappings of capitalism or materialism, etc. To a certain extent, it feels like, the system, Babylon.
Yeah.
After it ended, it feels like Babylon went, no.
Yeah, we're not done with you.
Let's go back to that. All that to say, I mean, you, because you did COVID on your own.
Yeah, I did.
and you created kind of an interesting project out of that, like the film that you made. How did that period and that experience in making that film, would you say that it altered how you're approaching life now? Like you talked about, you talked about this idea that is going back to a certain element of community.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question because the pendulum, like you rightfully said, I feel personally has swung and is still swinging back towards this resistance to something that I discovered rediscovered, during the pandemic, and that was the importance of belonging and of family and of chosen or genealogical or however they come about. But in the wake of that, it feels, and I think because I kind of, as pragmatic as I am, I think deep down I'm actually an optimist, but maybe even a romantic, but who likes getting their heart broken? Certainly not me. And it was looking at the stages of this and going, these are the last kicks of a dying system that is resisting working from home, degrowth, all of these systems of like we were saying earlier, the veils being lifted of why are we doing this? What is the point of this ultimately? What is the ultimate goal of being alive? And, it can't be adding shareholder value. As much as we love the shareholders, please keep us paid, shareholders. But there's only a certain threshold, to what the point of any of it is. And I mean, I digress a bit, but to kind of hopefully come back to answering your question is, COVID for me was a great time to turn the mirror outwards, actually, because, I'm generally ambiverted, but time alone for me is not time that I regret in any way. So I was in contact constantly with friends and family. I had this routine where I'd wake up, I'd eat, I'd cook, I'd do yoga, and then I'd start writing the Isolationist, which occupied all my time. So it was great reflecting and looking back at everyone, even though everyone wasn't doing great, but it was great that I felt like a sense of purpose in using my gift in a way that could reflect back and make the piece that I did, which was also, quite experimental and out there considering how much commercial work that I do. But it felt necessary and important at the time. And yeah, for me, it was when I would speak to friends and, oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm not getting along with, or this thing is not working out, or, a family member's sick. So it was kind of my way to show people that they aren't alone. And I think that needs to continue into now is that, economies are down. The world feels unstable. It feels like we're on the verge of these wars. None of these things are new. None of them are as uncertain as we'd like to think. If we step back and go, oh, this is a system. Oh, there's a cycle here. Interesting to see. Oh, Reagan is kind of like Trump, is kind of like. So that tells us that the ways that the world is also can change, can be altered, but we all need to, kind of, link arms and pull into it together. So again, to answer your question, is that my hope is that the changes and the chasms that happened during COVID are waking up now, because we're on the verge of, seeing Palestine eradicated and all of these things, and that we galvanize and we act and we kind of say, wait, the system is resisting because we are saying we want something else. And it happened for us, particularly in South Africa. So, none of these things are as insurmountable and hopeless as they seem. And the isolationist and what COVID taught me was lean into those fears and kind of look into that abyss, because the abyss isn't as scary when you realize that you're not alone. I don't know if I'm answering your question. You kind of went off on a tangent, but
we're having a conversation, so it's all good.
But yeah, so that was a big learning out of COVID, and also that I don't want to do it alone, because I made that whole thing. I shot it, I was in it, which also I hate being in front of the camera, ironically. But it was a confrontation of that also, of like discomfort for myself, and again, making something alone, and then going, I really appreciate collaboration and having an editor who I disagree with, but ultimately two minds create this whole new synergy of something we both might not have thought of, and that is the magic of collaboration and creation and creativity. Is human beings are only around because our superpower is collaboration in a way that no other species can and does do. And if we remember that, we hopefully stop ourselves from extincting ourselves.
That's a weird one, because I'm in the middle of a moment of remembering that. Because I've generally driven and done stuff on my own for a very long period of time, and also recognize that it limits kind of what I can do. And sometimes I think, I'm talking about it now, and so I was raised by a father who had to fend for himself for a very long period of time. So he always harped on about being independent and being self-sufficient. To the detriment, which is, it's a good place to be, right? To recognize that you have agency and you have power. You can make decisions in your life, but realizing now in my middle age, my middle age, that sometimes it's created a situation where it's harder for me to kind of go, yo, Anthony, I've got this idea. What do you think? Let's do something with it. And so I'm sitting in the middle of that. And as I was telling you earlier on, I've just come out of I'm coming out of a bit of a health crisis. And I know enough to know that we're supposed to learn from these things, right? Like when these moments happen, we're supposed to, it should alter kind of how we move forward. So I'm in the middle of going, okay, what are the lessons I can learn? And it's tied to that idea of collaboration. It's tied to that idea of working with other people. It's also tied to the idea of letting go.
That's a big one.
Letting go and recognizing that, like you're saying, have an editor you disagree with. Letting go to the point where the end result will not be exactly how you saw it panning out. And that's all right.
And you know what's interesting about what you said is the sooner I accepted that about life itself, the more everything else became the leaves on the branches of that thought, as it were. So it was like, you know, people have my 3 to 5 year plan, my 7 year goal, and it's all good and well. But, you know, what is that? There was this poetic prophet once, Mike Tyson, who said, you know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And that's literally what life constantly is. And what I've accepted it as is it's an adaptation of punches. Some you bob, some you weave, some you take a clean uppercut to the face. And you get up as many times as you can until eventually, you know, there'll be a punch that I can't get up from. And hopefully by then it's been a rich and fulfilling and interesting experience. And I say that for the good and the bad and the ugly of it, is all it can be is an experience. Is we cannot dovetail it to, you know, curate it to make it a perfect one way or another. To come back to the point, is you just have to adjust your mindset and your perception of what's going on. Because there's actually a lovely proverb or parable that my dad used to tell us as kids about. There's this super wealthy man who has a set of twins. One is an eternal optimist, the other is an eternal pessimist. Their 16th birthday comes along, and these twins both love horses, admire horses, they worship horses, their whole house, mansion, compound, all of it. The dad on that 16th birthday goes first to the pessimist child, and he's got a wheelbarrow full of manure, rich manure. It stinks. It's, you know, they're on a farm. And the pessimist son is like, you brought all of this horse manure? And he's cursing out his father. He's like, why would you give me a pile of manure as a gift? You know, you don't love me. Da, da, da. He leaves. There's an altercation. They don't speak again. The dad takes a wheelbarrow to the second optimist child, and he's like, here's a wheelbarrow. Here's your gift. The optimist child is like, if there's this much manure, there must be new horses around. You've bought us new horses. Show me. And he takes them to the new stable, and there's horses, and they have a, you know, a revelry, and it's a good old time. And it goes to show that sometimes, oftentimes, a lot of a situation we can't control, but if we can accept reality on its terms, then we can start to do something about how we're deciding to perceive it, because it's half empty or it's half full. Often is up to us, outside of the material conditions, within reason, you know, that we can control. So yeah, it's interesting when you start to think of it in that way, because suddenly simple things become romantic and fulfilling. A cup of coffee, if you appreciate it as, this might be the last coffee, or, you know, what did it take to make this thing, or just to change how you know, a breeze on a hot summer's day becomes a thankful gift, rather than, I'm so hot, it's stuffy in here, I can't, at least now there's wind. You changed literally how you approach life, and hopefully how life approaches you.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, which is one of my favorite things, goes back to lens. And the lens with which we view and engage with the world.
Yeah.
And also context, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, like you're saying, you can, you know, we can look at anything and find the good or the bad in it. And sometimes it's not even about good or bad. It's just, okay, this is the situation. How do I deal with it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about, for example, a cup of coffee, I used to work with the young writers, and I used to say, give me anything and I can find you 8 different angles on it. So, and it's just about being able to stretch your, you know, broaden the lens that you use.
Yeah.
And random story, I learned this as a 16-year-old, 16, 17-year-old. Because I went to, after high school, I was a Rotary exchange student.
Okay.
And for the final set of interviews, like a weekend in Bloemfontein. And literally, we spent Saturday, Sunday there, and you're being watched all the time. We had panel interviews and that sort of stuff. But at dinner, everybody's given an envelope. And in the envelope, one of those small envelopes, in the envelope was a piece of paper with a word or a couple of words typed on it. So you had 2 minutes. I think it was like 2 minutes to prepare, and then you had to give a 3-minute speech. And so I got on, and mine said the color blue. And I think my speech lasted maybe just over a minute. And there was a girl who had the word yuck.
Okay.
They had to stop at the end of 3 minutes. And that's when I realized my problem was I read the words and then tried to talk about blue.
Yeah.
I could have talked about the paper. I could have talked about the font. I could have talked about color. I could have talked about and let that take me anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
And that lesson, literally, I've used that lesson for my whole life now as a writer. Or even, for example, having a conversation like this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's just go, and then we'll figure you'll figure out, because there are no clear rules when somebody says do this and doesn't give you rules.
Yeah. And I mean, even the idea of rules are just, again, it's a construction of agreed upon terms between a group of people. And I mean, with our rich history, we have the perfect example of, there were a lot of apartheid time laws that were legal. They're the rules, but are they just? Are they moral? Are they principled? Divergent roads. And which is why principle frameworks generally become better ways of engaging and interacting, because you can't fault a principle. Golden rule is the easiest and my favorite and the most flawless, because however way you jig it, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is that in as much as you can apply it, it's a flawless, beautiful way of looking at it, because whatever you exchange to another, you are expecting that in repayment. And that is the perfect deterrent. You don't need nuclear weapons. You don't need any of that if you have that mindset. I was like, oh, I wouldn't appreciate that, so maybe I shouldn't. It simplifies things. So it's looking at principles and how you approach things more than hard and fast rules, because human nature is, if there's a rule, there's a way around it. And we exist in the late stages of capitalism and all kinds of political systems where the most unjust people, the most corrupt, can circumvent systems because they can afford to, and it's designed that way, versus the most desperate who need sustenance, the basics, a place to live, have less protections, which speaks to like a larger thing in my mind about society. And how do you solve society problems is you level life up for the most vulnerable and the weakest. And if you think of who that is, it's always the kids. Even Kanye in his delirium said, listen to the kids, bro. Broken clocks and being right twice a day. Look at me. I digress. But the ultimate point that I make is, now I've even forgotten the point that I was making. Anyways.
Was there a moment you looked at a camera and went, that's how I want to tell stories?
Yeah, I have such an interesting journey, and it's been so humbling, and a lot of life has just been so like lessons in humility for me, because I used to despise photographs. The idea of them, getting dressed up for the photographs, my mom making us, putting Vaseline, shining there, hated them for the longest time. And then, I got a little bit older, and then we got a 28K modem in my house. And I was like, huh? What is this modem thing? What is this? What do you mean I can't call people? And it dialed up and it went. And then I discovered the internet and like web pages. And eventually it led me to discovering something called Tumblr. And I was just like, oh, wow, there's poetry here, and there's books, and there's just like this well of creativity that I'd never seen condensed and being so released in such an unfettered way. But the beauty of like most things, like when I, as a kid, I loved reading. You read so much that you can't help yourself, that there's an itch now, you have to express it. And then you find yourself now writing. the same thing happened with photographs. I'd see all of these photographs from all around the world and the best photographers. And for me, it was like, I don't see black faces. I don't see faces like mine. No one is walking to Maboneng and no one's walking to Braamfontein. And I borrowed a camera because I didn't have one from a friend of mine. And it was almost like I was impelled. It almost felt like I couldn't help myself. And I picked up that camera that I borrowed and I just started taking photos around Kempton Park, Benoni, Tembisa, borrowing cameras and posting them on Tumblr. And that kind of sparked something new. And then I discovered and realized, much like something Gordon Parks once said, is that this was just a medium. It was just a tool to convey my thoughts. They could have taken on any number of mediums. It just needed discipline and focus, and it just so happened that photography I had a natural knack for. So you know how it goes is that where you have a talent or skill that is easy, you lean into it. And it's not that you're more talented at it particularly, it's just that your expediency to learning it was so much shorter that it felt good, because we all know that learning something new is humbling. You feel stupid, you feel dumb. I don't know how many softwares and how many things and how many iterations of life where at the beginning of it, it felt like I'm never going to understand this. I'm never going to be able to drive. I'm never going to be able to build a website, whatever the thing was. But ultimately, it's repetition and commitment to that threshold. I think David Bowie also spoke about it. It's like the buoyancy of walking out to sea, and the place just before your feet start treading water is the place you want to be as a person and as a creative being and as an entity, is that discomfort of stretching, but also the confidence of knowing that in that discovery you can grow and you can change and you can adapt as the circumstances around whatever it is that you're doing exist. We are not our skill sets. We are not any one thing. The ability to adapt and learn is innately human. Is move to Japan tomorrow and live there for 10 years. You're gonna domo arigato gozaimashita. Suddenly, if you're willing to. I mean, I see it with Zimbabwean friends of mine who've moved to SA in 2 years. Like, and it's a willingness versus other groups that have lived here for decades and can shla. That's a will thing, but I digress again. Yeah.
At what stage was this in your journey? Because I see that you studied media studies, focusing on radio broadcast and advertising.
Yeah, correct.
Did you pick up the camera before that or after that?
It was a constant.
Or during?
Yeah, it was during. It was a constant because the first photographs I did were kind of towards the end of studying, because ultimately, initially I wanted to, I came from the stable of growing up with driving to school with my dad, listening to guys like John Burks and, a very different generation of talk radio, but absolute legends who held conversation. And I loved that about that, which is why I went into it. But that was kind of the focus. And this just became an antithetical hobby to radio production, which was abstract of visuals. And I guess my mind is like that often, is that it finds a counterbalance to the thing that I'm in, for balance, for perspective, to kind of see it from two different ways. And eventually it evolved into photography kind of taking over, because after radio, I worked at 1 or 2 radio stations, and then I adjusted from working in production in radio to copywriting. And again, in copywriting, I needed an antithesis to, write all of this copy, write all of these words, because what I wanted to write were books and screenplays. But alas, advertising, was paying the bills at the time. So that's where that became a thing, where the photography just became a way to reset my mind and my soul and my heart. And then it became another vehicle and another voice. And ironically, now that visuals are the mainstay, poetry and writing and creative short stories and all of that has become another creative outlet for me that has kind of fed back into itself, where now I'm at a point where, I want to make longer form and features and tell my own stories using the skill sets that I've learned on both sides of that. But again, to answer your question, photography, all of these tools were just, what I'm realizing were stepping stones towards my ultimate dream, which is to make features and make movies, stories, because they introduce everything that I've learned along the way: music production, creative writing, visual literacy, narrative, themes, subplots, character development, photography. It literally becomes the creative maker for me of being also the most accessible kind of art that there is. I love the art world, but I hate its inaccessibility because it's these stuffy rooms of wealthy people who can afford astronomical amounts. That's not what art was, and particularly not what art is for Africans. If you look at our history, our art was contextual, it was immersive, it was practical, it decorative. It served a lot of purposes all at once. It wasn't just removed, it was a part of culture, it was a part of society. So for me, movies are that, because not everyone knows to go to X Gallery in Rosebank or Sandton, but I remember watching certain movies as a kid and going, yo, I'm going to be a staring like Robocop.
Yeah.
I'm going to be this character. Yo, Van Gogh is a guy who used to paint. It's the truest version of art, is that the foothold to access it is almost nothing. And even if you couldn't afford that ticket, best believe there was that uncle who bootlegged it and projected it on a wall. So that's the kind of stuff I want to make, is that whether you have the means for it or not, I know you can access it if you want it. And that is the most democratized, is that the word, version of art that should and does exist. And I want to create, outside of what we all do as a means to an end, it should be that ultimately. Again, I don't know if I've answered your question, but I really hope I did.
I mean, it's interesting. Like when you're talking about that, I was just thinking my relationship with certain artists in the art world actually stems from film. So Van Gogh, I remember there was a film done in the 80s, and it was on Van Gogh and his life. And I remember watching that film.
Yeah.
And that film kind of it was entertaining, etc., but having an impact such that Van Gogh has always kind of been a part of my language or part of my narrative because of that film. And Basquiat, there's a film with Jeffrey Wright as Basquiat.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember watching that when it first came out. And that's the thing that drew me to Basquiat and his work. Before it became so popular.
Yeah.
It was, and then the final one is, there's a poet called Miguel Pinheiro.
Okay.
And he was one of the co-founders of the Nuyorican Poetry Club in New York. And I have a friend of mine who's based in New York, and he's a friend, and I say he's a friend, but we've never met. And we got to know, we met over Twitter, and since then, we've been
mutuals.
So we're like, so essentially for 15 years, we've been interacting in different ways, right?
Yeah.
On different platforms. And so he recently posted, they were doing like a celebration of Miguel Pinheiro's life at the Nuyorican. And I remember going to New York, and I was in New York for a tech launch. And I think I was in New York for 39 hours or something.
Yeah.
And met up with friends for dinner the night before I was leaving.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I do anything, I have to go to Nuyorican. And literally we went there, I chilled there for like an hour and a half. And it was like the open mic nights I used to run in Joburg. That's...
Yeah.
But for me, it was like a pilgrimage of sorts. And there was a movie, Pinheiro, with Benjamin Pratt as the main character. And that's what's brought about my let's say my relationship with Pinheiro and his art.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is accessibility, because what ultimately are we trying to say? Like, what is the point? What is the message? What are we after? And I think if any of us as living, breathing, creative beings, drill back into that and more into that. Whatever we make just comes from a naturally more honest, more interesting, more dynamic place, because we're being led by the message and the story and what we're trying to get across. And I think, yeah, it's important that we don't lose sight of that, because in the midst of, there's a saying about being busy for busy's sake is like being a spinning top that's just kind of spinning in place. Is that like something like I've mentioned twice in jest is something like AI and technology is what is the ultimate goal that we're working towards as humanity? And it should be to enrich our simple way of lives, of giving us the opportunity to pursue higher conscious thoughts and ideas and creativity. No human should be sweeping and cleaning and working as security. There's so many ways that we can change that. And I think the first way that we introduce those ideas is through mediums like books, like movies, comics, cartoons, and all of those places. There's an anime that I love and manga called One Piece, and on the surface, if you look at it, it's an anime or manga about pirates on the seas, and it's Japanese cartoons. If you look deeper, it's a socio-political commentary, it's a geopolitical commentary about liberation, about capitalism, about communism, about the states of the world, about state-sanctioned violence, about all of these topics that people, find it easy to rally behind and want to get justice behind. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, there's a bridge we just need to connect, which is the final piece, ironically, to get people to act and to understand that these are just mirrors of the systems that we're all trapped in, and the ways that we're all existing in. And the way that life is does not have to be this way. Like, our collective imaginations cannot be limited to the things as they exist now. Like, at the very least, things begin in imagination. Think of all the sci-fi movies. I used to love Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox and all of that. Half the stuff that existed then exists now, just not in the ways that we thought. We have cloud services, even though we don't have sky cars, but we're close to that too. We have supercomputers, Terminator, AI. A lot of the imaginations that humans have conjured over the years have existed. The Wright brothers, before flight existed, had to imagine humans flying. So let's not limit ourselves and go, these systems have been tried and tested for 200 years. Guess what? We're 200,000 years old. Yeah. Let's look further back. Let's look further forward, and let's act. And I think, again, something as simple and as romantic as movies can be a starting point. But also, please, let's not romanticize movies and think that movies will change the world. Spark the thought, and then let's act and let's galvanize. I watched on Youth Day Ernest Cole documentary. One of my favorite photographers, and one of the guys, even before the Tumblrs and all of that I would just see his photos, Gordon Parks, so many politically active photographers, and their work made you want to wake up and act and to do things. And that's kind of the work that, hopefully I can get into and do one day. But ultimately, the points I'm making is the creative voice and the ways that we apply them can be agents of dynamic collaboration, and just seeing the world the way we want it to be, rather than complaining about what it isn't.
Where does the name The Expressionist come from? And do you still are you still in a place where you feel that applies?
I've definitely outgrown it, but I've outgrown it to the point where people use it and don't use it, but I don't care, honestly. It's like my names. People call me Anthony, Anton, Tony, Rhulani, Ruru, Bila.
I've never seen you as a Tony though.
There are people.
That's the one.
But yeah, what is a name and what is identity? I make photographs. People say I am a photographer. I like to think of myself as someone who makes photographs. None of these things are really tied to me, because the parts of me that I try to cultivate are the parts nothing and no one can ever take away. So I lose my eyes, photography becomes slightly difficult. I go bankrupt, whatever those things are, they're external and they're great and they are a part of me, but they are not me. So outside of, what was the question again, man? I really did go
The
from a tangent.
Expressionist.
Oh, the Expressionist.
Where it came from,
Yeah,
and where you are now, and your view on it.
So I think I've outgrown it, but I don't mind if it still exists as a marker of time. But where it was born from was, even as a kid, I've always loved clothes as a medium of expression and as a way of kind of having a perspective. And for me, that is a democratized place where everyone can have expression, because I'm less interested in you being traditionally stylish in any particular genre or way. And then rather than you having a particular perspective or opinion or a way of looking at the world through the way that you express, that's more interesting to me. So I called myself the Expressionist initially because every morning, to me, everyone is a blank canvas after that bath or that shower or whatever it is. And you're making active choices in what you're putting together, whether you're conscious of it or not. I care, I don't care. Today, I want to feel cozy. I don't want to feel cozy. Today, I feel X, Y, and Z. And that was, to me, the most interesting thing, is that like everyone becomes the expressive in whatever way and creative. And me being the documenter, being an observer, because I like to think of myself as a bit of an introverted fly on the wall. I know no one will believe this because I'm speaking, but I live alone with the cat. So when I speak, I speak. When I don't, I don't. I'm often more quiet than not, ironically. But yeah, that's how that name came about, was looking around. To me, everything is a way and a form of expression. And even more interesting than that is that it's a political statement that you can make through what you wear and how you wear and what you don't wear, Like if I came in with the red beret today, without saying anything, people would have assumed and taken on a certain context. Well, maybe not, because we're in a Vodacom studio. So they might have just thought, hey, he's just for the brand. So, but yeah, so it was just a way of capturing how people express themselves. And I think it's iterative, but it's still at the heart of what I do, is that it's an excuse for me to connect with people because, I'm strange and I'm odd, and the camera just is an excuse, because if I walked up to people half the time, it's just Anthony wanting to talk, which I love to do to just, all kinds of people from all walks of life. It comes off as strange at times. But when there's a camera, it's take me a picture, we chat, we make a connection, and I become like a wandering nomad of human interaction.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. We delve into their journeys, the decisions they have taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the spirit takes us. Now let's get back into the conversation.
All of this, that's really what I want to do. Is humans are fascinating to me and interesting creatures, because every perspective you meet is a new way of looking at the world. And I've loved science fiction as a kid forever. And parallel universes were this thing that always is like about choices and decisions, and always wondering how many decisions could have taken me to how many different places.
Yeah.
But then the invert of that, I realized years ago, was every person you meet creates a new version of you that they understand. So however many people I've met, let's say it's 100,000, there are 100,000 Anthony's, Rhulanis, Rurus, Anthony's, Tonys rolling around that are a perspective on me that is not my own, because even mine is just my own perspective.
Yeah.
It's just one of 8 billion, really. So it's just an interesting understanding of people and identity, and who are any of us stripped of the things that we think define us, and where we're born and who we are. And the documenting, the photography, the stories are just an attempt to really understand that, which is something my dad always said to me as a kid, is seek to understand, then be understood. And it makes life a lot more peaceful, let me tell you, is understanding more than you're understood. As a kid, it's like, no one understands me, huh, Mom? It's less important if you understand yourself, because you become, like Bruce Lee said, water.
Mine has always been the masks that we wear. And we wear different masks depending on different people, and kind of, and it's not being fake. So like the mask that you're wearing when you were the parent versus a child versus a lover versus a stranger versus a friend, etc., etc. And it's like all of those masks together make up you. But like, what is actually you? Because it's so many, so many different masks.
Yeah.
My father always used to say, it's important to have certain principles. They don't have to be many.
Yeah.
But live by those principles. And like you were saying earlier on, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That's a very simple principle. It's profound, it's life-defining, but it's also very simple.
Yeah. And almost complex in its simplicity, because it's a very hard rule to live by. And I mean, it opens up the door for another side of human existence, which is acceptance and forgiveness and grace. And then, to what extent you accept and exhibit those things. Because, human beings, we're interesting creatures in how we interact with each other and where we leave each other off. So after today, we could not see each other for another 2 years. And the assumption naively in our own minds is that people kind of pause where we leave them and play where we pick up with them. And there's that gap of that in between often where people evolve, change, adapt, regress, progress, whatever it may be. But humans are interesting because we're often never where we've left each other off. And that in between is always an interesting dynamic and cross-section when you do cross paths or intersect or meet each other under new conditions and terms, as those same people are different, really.
So I've always been the proverbial fly on the wall because I am outright introverted.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who are ambiverts. Like I am I am kind of, I lean further in on the introverted side. But at the same time, I am fascinated by human beings as well, but from a distance. So I often watch. So I don't work with the assumption that, when I meet somebody now, they are where they were when I last met them, because from a distance, I've watched them.
Okay.
I've watched them kind of go through
X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Got you.
And therefore, like, this moment is, where are you now?
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to kind of go, oh,
interesting.
You're here now. Let's talk about how you got here.
Yeah.
As opposed to, but the last time I saw you were X, Y, Z.
Did you study anthropology, sociology,
no,
or
I did not.
economics?
I studied economics.
There we go. Makes sense then. That is clear as day. Just one of those three. It makes sense. It's logical. No. And it's a beautiful way of looking at it. The issue is that most people who study and work in economics just, do things like work for the World Bank and organizations as such, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was never that good at it.
Although you do get
I was raised by economists.
Yeah.
And it used to piss him off to no end when after I finished school and I was working with him, and because I moved back home and we're living in the same house and we're working together, and then we'd be watching something on the news and I'd be like, Konje, what does that mean again? Because he also used to lecture economics for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that's been, and going through this exercise has just kind of reminded me of that to no end, because I'm talking to people that I've interacted with or I've watched, and it seems a little dodgy.
No, not at all.
But
not at all.
I'm often talking to people that I haven't seen in a long time, but I'm kind of like, oh, where are you now?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious to know just
what informs our journeys, you know?
yeah, where are you now? What are the roots of it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I recently talked to, for example, Simpiwe Dana. And I met Simpiwe Dana when she was fresh in Joburg.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it's a story I always told. And then, and I hadn't seen her in years.
Yeah.
But sitting down and her remembering that moment and actually placing greater value in that moment than I ever did. And kind of going, because I remember that moment.
Yeah.
And then I've watched, and it's like now 20 years later, she is Simpiwe Dana.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's cool. It's cool to have been there.
Yeah.
And then see where the person is here. Let's have a conversation. And then the first thing she says, like, she remembered the night. She's like, that night for her was the start of everything that she's achieved since.
Wow. Yeah, but I mean, perspective is 2020, man. It's hindsight. And I mean, I was gonna say, you know, yeah, most journeys, at least mine, I can't speak for other people, but you know, the shortcut is how I got to this place is through many, many stumblings and failings, you know. Often people who sound wiser are just more foolish. Is that what I tell people? Is that like, I've just been, I've made a lot of mistakes, you know, been fired from jobs, all kinds of, just being human. And I think it's accepting, understanding, and leaning into that, particularly as Black children in the world. Because, you know, I'll scroll TikTok and there's an example I saw of kind of a gentle parenting method where the child is pouring cool drink into a cup and they're spilling, and they look at the parent and the parent's like, it's okay, you're just making a mistake, pour it in the cup. And what that is now going to condition in the child is that mistakes aren't detrimental. They're not, if you see the mistake as an opportunity to understand, learn, and grow, you take from it rather than internalizing it, casting shame on it, because that's where we limit ourselves. But a long story short is that, you know, our failings are actually opportunities. And at least that's how I've seen them. And that's where the most growth I've seen is through my mistakes and other people's mistakes. Other people's mistakes, always the best place to learn because they're the shortest cuts.
They say the fool learns from their own mistakes. The wise person learns from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, so
I think most of us are somewhere in the middle.
No. I fully own being foolish because it's freeing. It's freeing to be like, I actually am a fool. I'm a foolish person. And owning that for me is, it begins the groundwork of, you know, sheesh, I'm foolish. I better think twice. I should move this way. And I mean, like I say, I get it very wrong very often, but it's a better place to lean into than pretending like I know it all. Because when I speak out loud, I often tell people I'm actually you're just the victim of having to hear what I'm saying. I'm speaking to myself first, because people say I sound a bit intense and harsh sometimes, and I'm like, imagine when it's like in my head, which it's not intense or harsh, but you know, I'm my own first, and I think we all should be. We're our own first students before we can wax lyrical to anybody else. So anyone listening to this, please, I've been talking to myself out loud through Kojo for the last however long.
How do you find balance between, say, commercial work and projects that you just want to pursue, like the counterbalance ones?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't had the balance, to be honest with you. You know, the world's economy has been very tough and very difficult, and I have a business with a partner and employees, so that levels your sense of duty and obligation to making sure there's work for people with families and salaries. You know, I can fly by the seats of my pants, more or less a bit looser because I don't have kids or a family per se, but I still have dependents and family obligations. You know, we live in a world of black tax that if you're black, you have a familiarity to. So I didn't have that balance because the priority was particularly towards the fluctuating states of the world, making sure the business is happy, healthy, and afloat. So that takes down the not the quality of the work, but the kinds of projects that you can do and their purpose to different ones. So I mean, I didn't have that balance, well, at least in the short term, because I understood that for the next 8 months, we need to be a business and we need to be quite stoic and focused on that. And I need to put my head down and use my creativity to, win us the business that's going to keep us going until things kind of stabilize in the world and for production companies with the advent of AI and a changing ecosystem and all of these, non-creative things that often people don't speak about because they're not sexy, but they're the realities. And I know I'm happy to speak about them if you ask. But yeah, so I didn't have that balance, but I understood that we just need to weather this storm because the climate change isn't just the weather; it's economic too, and it's as volatile. So yeah, we just kind of bedded down and did that work. And fortunately, now we're kind of coming to a place of relative stability. And I'm actually going to take a month off because I've come off a project now. I mean, I've been on back-to-back projects for almost a year and a half nonstop. But this penultimate one that I've done now was 2 weeks of 16-hour days. Very interesting, dynamic project, but lots of systems and people and things in it. So my agreement with my team was that after this project, I'm going to do one personal project, and then I go and leave on the 19th of, what month are we in? April? No, June, July. July? We're in July. You see how it goes? So I'm going away for a month. And then in that time, the rest is where the personal projects really speak to me. So there's a few that I've been, I'm always constantly writing short story ideas, documentary ideas. So there's a few projects that I'm very excited to make time for in this space and time frame. But also I need to be cognitive to just be still and to do nothing and to be bored and to allow my mind to rest and to let stillness bring up whatever needs to bring up within me. The rest period isn't also a time to just run into counterproductivity because I'm still feeding the beast ultimately. Yeah. And personal work for me needs to come from an inner voice, an authentic place. But I mean, there's constant projects that I do have that are start again, stop again, like this family projects that I've been shooting for the last 7 years, where I do portraits of my immediate and extended family over time to chronicle births, deaths, marriages, divorce, feuds, reconciliations, as it goes with the complexity of Black families and this most southern tip of Africa is. Family dynamics are never easy, and it was a project born from COVID in particular and being isolated, and then looking at photos and being thinking of family in the time in particular and going, what stands beyond this point of who we are and what we were. And I was reading about the Mayans and the Aztecs a few weeks ago, and I stumbled onto something interesting about a belief system there that I'd found about the 3 deaths, I think they call it. Okay. And the first death that they speak of in the culture is the first time you become aware of mortality, of death. So it's a certain level of a loss of innocence, when a child becomes aware that, oh, there is no farm. Oh, I hope there's no kids listening to this, but there is no farm where the dogs are going to, they're gone. So that's the first one, is a level of self-awareness about mortality. The second is the physical death that we all will experience one day and accepting that. And the last one, and the most interesting to me, was the last death is the last time anyone says your name. And it just made me think of being African and South African in Itagazelo and how, our history is so rich in chronicling and remembering who people were through those naming rights and through those really living, breathing chronicles and archaeological, tools, even if they were verbal or oral. And it was just an interesting way of contextualizing, remembering, and keeping knowledge of people, is that you do it through remembrance and through that physicality. So, a personal project, like I said, that I come back to is this family one because of how dynamic and complex those family dynamics are. And because it's just for family, I'm happy to write in, oh no, this family didn't get along, and there was a few, because it makes it more colorful. And I think it also frees us from family feuds where half the time I speak to friends and they're like, yeah, I don't get along with these cousins. And I'm like, why? They're like, because it's a family feud. And I'm like, well, this remembering and breaking that stigma, and actually really a construct of the apartheid time regime, is the more you erase people from who they are and where they come from and how connected all of these groups of people were, the easier they are to control. And I think in this project, the hope was that it sparks the same idea in other families. Get a camera phone on your cell phone device and start remembering. Because if I can't tell you what my great grandfather looked like. I know his name a little bit, and I'm even fortunate for that. But who was he? What was the color of his eyes? What was the sound of his? Was he a cheeky guy? Was he quiet? Was he business? Was he a scallum? Was he a philanderer? All of that helps us paint ourselves and contextualize ourselves. And so much of that was robbed of us. But it also needs to be re-remembered and start somewhere. So, print your pictures, make photo albums, take them off the phones.
Absolutely.
Let's make physical things.
Look, I've been thinking about that remembrance and the different stages. When somebody transitions and there's all of that attention in a particular period. But I've also realized and recognized that fades quite quickly. So for majority of people, there are people who just forget.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are closer, where it's like a once in a while thing. And then there's the people really close, where it's a bit more constant. But even with them, it takes a bit longer. So this idea of, because people talk about what legacy you're going to leave. And I'm leaning to, I'm now leaning to the point where it's like, at some stage, my name will be forgotten. I will be forgotten. And that's
okay.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. But the other side, which for me, what you talk about in terms of documenting, that there's an importance there.
Yeah.
I mean, my father passed away, it's coming on 10 years. I don't have a lot of pictures of him. I don't have recordings of him. And then my mother passed away when I was a baby, so literally, I don't know what she sounded like, smelled like, felt like, any of that sort of stuff. Whereas, and I was talking to one of previous guests on the thing, Alistair Mokwena, and I was like, if anything, just this act, at least I'll leave something that for those for those for whom it'll be important, I can still be heard and seen, but even that's going to fade.
Yeah. But I mean, and there is that exactly that acceptance of that, but there's also the beauty of it informing so much more of what is to come, and the future generations that will be born from you and the people from you. Is so much of that is just it's just important context. I remember we eventually found one of the photos of my great-grandmother, and my younger sister is the spitting image of her, but she looks nothing like my mom or any of the other siblings or aunts that are alive. But even just that simple act reminds you that epigenetics is a thing, is that everything in us is code and story and storage of people who came before us. And the more you know, the more you feel again a sense of the fact that, the reason I like to lean this way is that I actually remember there's a photo of an uncle who leaned that way. That's just some code that's a remembrance of him. But it just makes our histories richer because, and which connects us back to ourselves, and it decolonizes and it breaks and it lifts those veils again of the ways that we existed and thought we needed to exist and were imposed on us by colonial and imperial forces. And these are the ways that we start to break that is it's Black Panther, remember who you are, for my American audience, because they'll love that. The rest of us is just remember, and celebrate
Meanwhile,
it.
Black Panther was written by two middle-aged Caucasian Americans.
I mean, no surprises there, to be honest. I mean, I loved it. It was a great movie. Shout out to Ryan Coogler, one of my favorite filmmakers. But, if you're African, you watch that movie with a different... absolutely. With a different veil, as it were.
You should.
Yeah.
If you don't, you should.
I mean, even just that there was a TikTok trend about America doing a Zulu Nation parade.
Oh, yeah.
So, take it from whence it comes. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, it was a Zulu Nation parade with blackface.
Yeah. In 2025.
By black people.
But you can't, that's a story for a whole other thing. But look, I do have a level of understanding, again, for people that are born and exist inside of the imperial core, is you're born into Kool-Aid. Like the way you see things, even at your most liberal, might be compromised because you're in the core of the imperial core. So, understanding of things for me has become this journey on a road where the old version of me would have been very exacting and like, you don't know how do, and now it's kind of like, oh, you're just not where I am, but here's the info if you want it. I hope to see you where I am, because there's someone further ahead who's going to teach me something that I have to now, step back and go, oh, I had no idea. I need to be humbled here and reframe how I see things. But that's the beauty of a belief system and a worldview that is open to correction, is that there are no holy cows. Which means, like, my worldview being shattered from time to time is as a healthy exercise, as destabilizing and as much vertigo as it can give you to the fundamentals of how you see the world changing. They're a necessity if you never want to be limited or controlled, or just to limit how you can understand and see the world, or more nefariously is being controlled because somebody else is being othered, so that you can, nationalism as an example, or demagogism as things to be wary of. And that's where observers are very important. Followers, leaders, and a sprinkling of observers. Observers are usually the ones who get disappeared and snuffed, because leaders don't even mind other leaders, because you'll all get your factions. Followers, dime a dozen, depending on how charismatic you are. But observers that would point out things, whistleblowers essentially. I mean, I don't have to say more about that in this country either. So again, we digress. Let me drink my water.
Why did you start a business? And I asked that because it's always felt like you're in a position, I mean, like you said earlier, you could fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
But you're responsible for the livelihood of others.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to kind of approach work and stuff a particular way. But it's always felt like you could have gone ahead and just operated as individual in this world, flying by the seat of your pants. Why actually take that very deliberate step, which requires work and process and systems, to actually start a business?
To be honest, because I absolutely didn't want to, because it was the thing that I resisted the most. So a good example of myself in a kind of microcosm is I have an artist friend of mine. I won't say his name to spare him the discomfort, but he was kind of in an existential dread because he was prominent, prolific, famous, successful even, but he was, to quote another prolific poet of our modern day and age, Rick Ross, suffering from success. And he had become trapped by that success without realizing it. And he was telling me and lamenting about how he felt, stuck, like the work wasn't progressive. And he was telling me he's going to radically change his life by moving countries and starting all over, just like he moved to Joburg to make it in the big city. And I was like, way too comfortable with what you've just said, it tells me that that's not where your place of discomfort or the place where you need to lean into the discomfort is. And I was like, you mentioned something about your art style though, that it hasn't evolved in some time. How open are you to changing and trying and experimenting with something new? And he immediately literally recoiled. And he went, why would I do that? And I was like, you don't have to move countries. The thing that you're scared of, the place that you don't want to lean into, that's exactly where you need to go, because that's where you're going to challenge and grow yourself the most. And he's started doing that. He leaned into it. He was prepared to kind of lose some of the old fan base because people, like what they like and to a flaw sometimes. And, Henry Ford once said, if I'd asked the consumer what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. And sometimes it becomes that with creative things, is that people just like what's familiar, not what's good. Side thought there. But to bring it back to me, is that's why I started the business. It was freeing. It was, like I said, it was like, I was like, if anyone knows the reference, it was Luffy in his barrel jumping into the ocean going, I'm going to be king of the pirates. And where this takes me is where I go. And, it's that freedom and sense of adventure was great. And you feel alive. But there are also skills and shortcomings that I have that I wanted to meet face to face. Systems, logistics, structure, responsibility, not romanticizing. I'm a creative, all my work needs to. It's a business, we've got stuff to do. Everyone grit their teeth, grin and bear it sometimes, but we also get to be creative. But also I wanted to experiment with how we set up our business. So even before COVID, me and my business partner set it up to be 9 till 3 rather than traditional 8 till 5. We have profit share on business clients that people bring in. So, we did a thing where we offered therapy, and we just try to create an environment and a different way of working that kind of speaks to more of the ways that we believe and want to work in the world. Even though we live in a capitalist system, is that like, can we make it more just, more fair, more inclusive? Can we include more people and, make the way that we work better for everyone involved? So that's what we're striving towards always. It's not just about the work. Is that even on challenging shoots, did we arrive at the work in a way that was conducive and healthy? And in when we didn't, did we own it? And did we compensate? And did we work fairly and inclusively with people? So those were all the reasons. But not a day goes by, and I tell the people for free that I would not rather just get back in that barrel and surf by the seats of my pants. But stages and phases and places, as said DMX, or was it Tupac? It was Tupac. No, it was DMX. It was a song called Slipping, Falling, I Can't Get Up. That song still brings me to tears. But so that was why, is because I didn't want to. And often I like to do things that I don't want, just to see if I can.
What's inspiring you or exciting you right now?
Right now, rest. The ability to just, I like to do this thing where I just sit on my lounge, no music, no TV, no lights, no book, and just sit in stillness, and just see what comes up, what thoughts, what feeling. Do I laugh? Do I cry? Do I... I'm looking quite forward to that, because from there, I'll know what comes next, because I don't know. I've just kind of been in a more functional freeze of project to project, work to work. So I'm looking forward to the ability to not look and see what comes. But again, there's all these creative projects, personal projects that are really scary and challenging, and all the ways that I've described that I'm excited for is what do I say when no one's looking, kind of thing. Even though, a small percentage of people might look, they might not. It's not my concern once I've made it. Is, one view or 100 million, I'm not losing sleep. The process is the point for me. And, making it and layering it in with all the little Easter eggs and all the ideas that I have, because I just haven't had the time to fully express them. And ironically, from what I've said in the beginning, that's what I'm looking forward to, is creatively being selfish now, because I've been working in collaboration and sharing the vision with everybody and being collaborative. And I can be all of those things, and now I don't have to be. So now there's a clear vision, and there's a way I want to do it, and I'm happy to commit to that at the expense of people liking it or not. I'm almost craving that polarization of creating something that's just very singular, very deterministic. So that's what's inspiring me, is like, oh, you didn't like it? Tell me why. And we can explore that too. Oh, you did like it? Tell me why. But yeah, not being attached to it is freeing, because then you can actually start playing and experimenting and, blending genres and formats and what is supposed to. We all know, there's a thing an artist once said about, like, you can understand almost how to pander, to please people. I think we live in a time where that is often happening with social media and people wanting the attention and the views, and kind of going antithetical to that. I don't know where it will go, but I'm interested to find out, and hopefully, find some people and lose some people along the way. Like, it's welcome. So that's what's exciting me, is everything and nothing.
Funny you say that. Like, I posted something recently, just kind of acknowledging what the podcast has done. I was just kind of like, oh, we've got, this number of subscribers, this number of things. And I literally just posted it as a story on Instagram. And somebody sent me a message and went, where's the call to action? And I was like, call to action? I was actually just reflecting on, I was like, I came across this information. I was like, oh wow, look, this is where we are right now.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was like, there's no call to action. Like, if people want to listen, they will listen.
Yeah.
I'm not sharing it to get them to listen.
Yeah.
I'm sharing it because
it's an offering.
This is what I was thinking about in this particular moment. And I decided to share, which I've done, we all do in different ways.
Yeah.
I decided to share this particular thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's as human as it gets. And I mean, it brings me back to my biggest and first and ultimate love, which is filmmaking, is that all you're doing and all we've ever done, it's as primal as fire, is storytelling. And we've iterated it into the theater of the mind and radio and written word and oral stories. But ultimately, is it comes back to human stories. And, humans was interesting again, because we feel and think that we have advanced. And sure, we've created technological advancements, but humans, if I took a human being from 2025 and one from the year 1 BCE, they woke up, craved love, food, shelter, some level of attention, companionship, friendship, community. People cheated, people married, people divorced, people murdered, people were born. The fundamentals of who we are hasn't changed. And human beings, we need to let go of thinking that we are, because here we are at the precipice of, the cusp, or not even the cusp, we're in the late stages of the information age, where information is at our fingertips, but ignorance is also at an all-time high. So it speaks more to human nature, and the people who've cracked human nature are the ones succeeding now. If you think of just what apps are, is, at the beginning of Airbnb and all of these apps, we were genius. All they did was platform, consolidate, put something in a cloud service, and put a stick of cheese or put a stick of honey, and we gravitated. So it's an interesting consideration.
Thank you, my man.
Thank you. This was. I hope this made sense. I go on these little thoughts.
Then you're perfect. You're perfect for this podcast, because all we do is sit here and talk shit.
And
see where it takes us. Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.